Many parents of what they term picky eaters claim that their children were born with awful feeding habits and that there's nothing they can do about it. They lament that their children will only eat chicken nuggets and french fries and feel like a short order cook with miserable meal times. The Satter feeding dynamics model provides a template for how parents can help their children become competent eaters. As a soon-to-be first-time mom myself, I've researched child feeding methods extensively because every parent wants the best for their children, and that includes food and nutrition. So the purpose of this speech is to inform you about the Satter feeding dynamics model. I'll talk a little bit about the background of the model, and then I'll talk about parents' responsibilities within the feeding model and children's responsibilities. So first, a little bit of background. The Satter feeding dynamics model was developed by expert in child feeding Ellen Satter, who worked for many years as a researcher and a dietitian. The model's been extensively tested and it's well proven. The goal of this model is, like I said earlier, to help children become competent eaters. And the official Ellen Satter website defines a competent eater as someone who is relaxed, self-trusting, and joyful around food, and takes good care of themselves. The model divides responsibility for feeding and eating into parents' responsibilities and children's responsibilities. And in fact, after conducting a lengthy research study, a committee from the American Academy of Pediatrics recommended this division of responsibility in feeding for children of all ages, from toddlers all the way to adolescents. So now let's talk a little bit about the role of parents. So parents are responsible for three things: providing the when, the where, and the what. So first, the when. Parents are responsible for providing 3 meals a day, spaced evenly with snacks in between. They're also responsible for the where, and the Satter feeding dynamics model encourages families to have dinner together at the dinner table, but recognizes that flexibility is important here as well. Now the what. This is perhaps the trickiest part. Parents are responsible for providing a wide variety of foods and foods from every food group or most food groups at each snack and meal. But they should also be considerate in acknowledging that children don't have a lot of experience with eating and with eating lots of different foods. So they should offer familiar foods with new foods. So for example, if you as a parent were making a new jambalaya recipe, you might perhaps include just a staple like bread and butter on the side, so that there's always something that the child could eat and has experienced before. Parents should also avoid being a short order cook or catering to the child's every whim and desire. Also included in the what is the responsibility to provide desserts and treats regularly. A study by 2 registered dietitians and professors, Birch and Daisher, found that restricting foods, especially these highly palatable dessert treat type foods, makes them more desirable to children and actually makes children more likely to sneak them or overeat them. So parents are responsible for providing these foods regularly so that they are taken off this pedestal. Now on to children's responsibilities outlined by the model. So the Satter feeding dynamics model says that children are responsible for 2 things. First, whether or not they will eat, and second, how much to eat. It's really common for parents to worry about their children eating enough or eating too much or getting enough vegetables or fruits or proteins. But the Satter feeding dynamics model asserts that this is children's responsibility. And in fact, many research studies, including one that was performed as early as 1939 by a pediatrician named Clara Davis, found that when children were offered a plate of a variety of foods, up to 15 or 30 foods, they were capable in the long run of self-selecting foods that made up a balanced diet and that were what we consider healthy. So the Satter feeding dynamics model asserts that children should serve themselves with adult help if necessary, and that they can choose not to eat, but they have the responsibility to be polite. So no yuck, ew, this is gross, but no thank you will suffice. And the Satter feeding dynamics model asserts that leaving these 2 things up to children leads to greater competency because it allows children to focus on their internal body cues. Children are also have a responsibility for being able to perform these without undue pressure from parents. In her observations, professionally and personally, Satter found that parents often use pressure techniques like negotiating or bribing to get children to eat certain foods or not eat certain foods, and that this usually had the opposite effect. And in fact, Birch and Daisher also found that child feeding strategies that encourage children to consume a particular food actually increase children's dislike for that food. So in conclusion, in this speech, I've described the background of the Satter feeding dynamics model and explained the responsibilities of parents and of children laid out by the model. If you're a parent or if you work with children, feeding kids is likely a big part of your life. The Satter feeding dynamics model asserts that children can grow up to be competent eaters and that parents don't have to resort to undue pressure techniques that make meals really unpleasant for the whole family. Just like learning to ride a bike, learning to eat as a child is a learning experience that takes practice and takes encouragement from parents. But with these structures in place, children can learn to be competent eaters.